You've written a very interesting book. You think a lot about housing, you think a lot about the economy, but you've written this book called Finance and the Good Society, and you're talking about how financial innovation, something that is a bad word to many, can actually be something that helps society. It's tough to ask me to have you sum it up, but try.
I think that the Occupy Wall Street people, if they're going to make the change they want, they've got to get into it. These financial institutions aren't going to go away. We have to see the progress in the institutions, and it has to be done from the inside. So I'm thinking that by teaching finance, I am not teaching people, my young students, to go do something evil. They have an opportunity to fulfill the goals that Occupy Wall Street want to achieve.
So to be clear, you are in no way offering, and as I've read it, you've offered no defense of the things that we think the financial industry did that were indefensible, the things they did that were bad. But you're suggesting with some changes, some of the things like the securitization of mortgages, something that we hold responsible in many cases for the financial crisis, you think actually done properly, they could be helpful.
Yeah, securitization of mortgages is an important financial innovation, and we want to see it continue. What it does is it makes mortgages ultimately more available, and we still have lots of people who can't really afford the home they want. So it's a definite plus. We messed up on it. You know, it's like when they invented airplanes. Some of them crashed. Now we have very safe airplanes. So we need aircraft engineers and we need financial engineers to make these things safer.
On a global scale, it's interesting because in a number of your recommendations in this book, you're also recommending basically issuing shares in countries to try and change the way that countries raise money. How feasible is that? And share your logic here.
Well, I've been advocating this for some time. Why do governments issue only debt? Companies issue both debt and shares. And shares are easier on them because you can't go bankrupt if you only have shares. It's the debt that causes problems. So why don't governments do that? I've been talking to governments about this, and I get this reaction, interesting, but these things happen only slowly. What I want is some kind of product that says you could buy a trillionth share of the U.S. GDP or any other country's GDP, and then you'd get a dividend equal to a trillionth of their GDP every year. And it would be like owning a share of a company, except it would be a share of a country.
Just want to go back to your analogy about the aeroplanes. In the early days, aeroplanes crashed, and with good engineering, they've got better and better. What makes it work, that industry, also is air traffic controllers. And what I mean by that is regulators. What we learnt from the financial crisis was the lack of regulation, whether it was not enough or they were looking in the wrong direction. What do you think now of the state of the regulations and the regulatory authorities in the US? Are they now capable of watching over to make sure we don't get another crisis and to be able to carry out some of the things you've been talking about?
You know, actually, in my book, Finance and the Good Society, I have a plug for regulators. I admire regulators. I think they're underappreciated in our society.
But isn't it a case that they manifestly failed, and that was one of the key reasons for the financial crisis, and has enough been done to stop that sort of failure happening again?
Well, we are doing things that governments around the world are now creating new agencies, like the Financial Stability Oversight Council in the United States, collecting new data, improving regulation. We do have a problem that regulation tends to be bureaucratic. The government assigns people specific tasks and doesn't give them authority to branch out. So one thing that led to this crisis was the emergence of the so-called shadow banking sector that was like a bank, but it wasn't technically a bank, so it wasn't properly under the authority of the banking regulators. And they couldn't do anything about it until the government changed the rules and gave them more authority. But we're working on that, and I think we have to make progress. We still need more and better regulating authorities. But I think we're moving forward. It's a long, slow process.
Bob, the book is full of very interesting things, and one of the things I didn't expect to find in it that I find very interesting is something that you call tradable social policy bonds. Tradable social policy bonds. Tell me what these are.
Well, I think this idea first came from Ronnie Horish in New Zealand. It's a very simple thing. The government issues a bond that will pay out only if some social goal, like a lowering of the unemployment rate or a lowering of the crime rate in some city, occurs. And so what that does is investors can invest in the bond and then make it happen. Now, the price of the bond might be very low if people don't think it's going to happen. So you might be able to buy these bonds cheaply, and then you do something. You set up some kind of non-profit that helps prevent crime or something like that. It then focuses the creativity of the whole community on ways to really make these goals happen. So that's it, using the power of financial markets to, and if you can make them tradable, as Horesh argues, then you don't even have to wait for your payoff until it actually happens. Once it looks like it's going to happen, the value of the bonds will go way up in the market.